Let us join our hearts in the spirit of meditation and prayer. The spirit of life, known by many names and of no names, source of all that is, was, will be, loving spirit moving in and through all. We're gathered here this evening to express our profound gratitude for our brother, Leon Spencer, and to form a circle to hold and witness the sharing of his spiritual journey. We are thankful for your many years of dedicated service, answering the call on many occasions to leave our faith during some of the most challenging times when many have lost hope in Unitarian Universalism. You're giving the best of yourself, even during the worst of time, is the testament to the beauty of your spirit. We have been blessed by your work for justice and wholeness, your commitment to dismantle white supremacy, your advocacy for racial justice, and your willingness to speak out against all kinds of oppression, with the steadfast insistence that we live into the promise of our faith. We are so grateful for your spiritual mentorship, for showing us the new depths of understanding, knowledge, and wisdom. We are grateful for your prayers, support, encouragement, and motivation that have meant everything to many of us who are here today, when there were times when we as siblings of color and this faith struggle with doubt, exhaustion, and uncertainty. We're blessed by your kind words, wise counsel, and offer of hope that help us get through some of our darkest times. Our beloved Leon, you are a blessing and light in my life and the lives of so many others. We are thankful for your exemplary example of what it means to be citizens of this beloved community, what it means to be Unitarian Universalists, and living into our principles. My heart is full of thanks and unending appreciation for your hearts of service to the ministry and mission of Unitarian Universalism. May you be blessed for the remaining days of your life. May this be so. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be.
And I believe that now I have the great privilege of introducing Leon Spencer, who is indeed a person who needs no introduction. However, I think that it's important to take just a couple minutes to say our gratitude for all the many roles that he has played. He has played so many that if we were to list them all, it would take the entire time that we have for this Odyssey. So we are not going to list all of them. But I want to mention that Leon has deep roots in our Unitarian Universalist faith, including being one of the founders of the European Unitarian Council, being part of the Black Concerns Working Group, being a member of the UUA board for just probably a whole lifetime, right, Leon? And being part of the district, the Southeast District name change process for a whole nother lifetime, part of our DRUUMM community, a member so active in so many roles that I just want to take a moment to honor that he has brought not only his deep understanding of who we are, but also his aspiration for what we can be. He's mentored so many of us and counseled so many of us. He's also, of course, given service to all of us by being an amazing groundbreaker in the field of multicultural psychology. And that wisdom that he brought into our faith helped advance our work as he did training with us through so many of our anti-racist programs and different efforts through the decades. So it is a great honor to introduce Leon, and we're going to do this in two parts. The first part is that Leon and I last summer had sort of a twilight family chat in which he spoke to me about his life and and shared his wisdom, and I videotaped that because I suddenly realized that I was once again, the beneficiary of Leon's wisdom, and I wanted to capture that in honor of this occasion. And then my son, Liam, who's known Leon since before he was born, then has helped us edit it into, we've been working for a while, haven't we, Leon, on editing this into the piece that you'll see. And then after that, Leon and I are going to have a brief conversation live with you. So I'd like to ask that we play the video. It's such a great honor to honor this amazing life and hear this wisdom.
You want to know, where do I come from? And where do I come from, and particularly as far as my spiritual roots.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I believe in spirits. Spirits keep me alive. They don't haunt me, they comfort me. Sometimes they kick my ass. And that's cool too. There's always a learning and teaching. But when someone asked me at church would I do a Sunday program, and it was one of these things where we talk about the Odyssey of ourselves.
Right.
Who are we? And how we became Unitarian Universalists. And so I decided to call it, Where's Our Holy Church? And to combine it with the gospel that my Hager Jackson used to say. My soul looked back and wonder how I got over.
Yeah.
So this is about journeying. It's about a journey that's not complete. And it's about my roots that is not the same for every person of my beginnings. So my first slide here is one of 7 spiritual homes for me. 7. I was a Unitarian Universalist before I knew what Unitarian Universalist was. But it comes from a strong AME root. All of my grandparents went to different churches. It was okay to go to different churches. Not only did they go to different churches, they went to the Mother Border's prayer band, which was seance meetings. And they would call upon the living dead, the living spirits. And I have a lot of living spirits, some that are not here now, but they are really living. And so much of that began in St. Philip's AME Church, which argues with St. Philip's Monumental Church in Savannah, Georgia, as to who was first. And this was the church of one of my grandmothers. Now, my grandmother, she's a different kind of, well, she wasn't a different kind of woman. She was just she was active. Her name is on a marble plaque with the names of elders and trustees, where I think there are 2 women's names. And she would go and she would touch it and have us to touch it. And it gave us a sense of belonging and ownership. And she was a very competitive woman and a very spiritual woman. One of the reasons that they're out of order is that where the original St. Philip stood is behind what is now the Embassy Suites in Savannah. Right. And there's a marble stone there, and it carries the name of Flipper, who was, I think, the first cadet. He became a bishop and a minister. There's lots of Flipper's chapels all over the place. But I go to that spot. Oh, I would say it was the man's church. There's a second African. It has a rich, rich history. It has pews that are in the basement today that you could sit on and have a political conversation. And if the authorities came in, you just shifted your body and the pew would go in the other direction, because you weren't allowed to have the political conversation looking at the altar. You go upstairs, it's the same majestic kind of home activism. However, my father and his cousin used to ring the bell. Churches had bells then. They used to ring the bell every Sunday. But all the women, not quite all, my grandmother and her sister left. And they left because they did not feel like they were being treated as equals. So women on both sides of my family, black women on both sides of my family, they would not tolerate being less than. One of them cleaned house for rich white people, but she would not ever tolerate the whole thing of being less than. But I was allowed to go to Second African if I wanted to. If no one said, well, once in a while, my grandmother would say, the other one, the AMA would say something like, so where are you going to church? And I said, well, I'm going to go to Papa's church. And she says, that's nice. So when are you coming back to church? Okay, and so, at any rate, Papa went and that was fine. We had permission to seek what we needed, when we needed, and how. We had boundaries also. So what I'm talking about, all of this is blackness.
Right.
All of this is
the first four churches that you talked about. Right?
The identity. The Holy Church is not one building. The Holy Church is in one building where everybody is thinking alike, even if there are liberal thoughts. The Holy Church is why I'm so attracted to what Blue talks about. The Holy Church is a haven and a harbor. And I knew how to code switch in a smart way. And I'm not talking about the code switching with being white or being person of color or being whatever. But I knew how to, we get this, I knew how to look back and know why and how I got over. I got over from those teachings. When you're saying how I got over, my soul looked back and won. That's how I got over. This is my great-grandmother. This is her brother, Paul, and sister. I've retrieved all these things that I found as I start to look. Someone looked and said, boy, you can tell that they got that Jamaican heritage. But they gave us a way of defining, that's a long time back here, and acting upon who we are, not losing ourselves in whatever we become. And if one of us is successful, all of us are. And you got to advertise it. It just gets so uncomfortable until they told me get over it. That's my moment in the graduating class of 1932 at St. Benedict's parochial school. There she is. Her best friend is here. I knew her. And I don't know him. I think his name was Father Obrecht. But look at it and look at the power. That's my dad here. Graduation Beach High School, Kala Beach, they call it at that time. And what I take in is this group of powerful people. This group of people who were oppressed, but really, you talk about community organizing, really knew how. These people who didn't hide out in church. And those who were hiding out, they'd have to come out. When I do this, some things become so evident to me. But what I often think about is myself on the floor of a beauty school, watching all these white shoes, because they had to be in uniform. These white shoes, walking around talking. And the conversations that they would have, that they would teach, the laughter, the crying. I heard lots of things that I needed to hear, that I wasn't intended to hear. Once in a while, somebody would say, Bubba's on the floor. And they would stop, and then somebody would go, that's all right. And so I learned a lot. Yeah. And love stories, oh my God. Stories of hurt relationships. Stories of racism, where you put a little box in the shop and everyone contribute. And what happens with it? That's in St. Philip's, by the way. That's another class. And there's my sister. I called her the little mascot, and I tell her, I said, you know, because she'd have to march in with the graduating class and so forth. They had full on graduations. They didn't have what you do in there. This isn't to put down a trade school, but people, this was a trade, but it was also a learning of way of life and community. And what was your role in contribute to community? No matter where your placement, what you heard, what happens. If someone said, where did you get your counseling degree? I became Dr. Spencer there, not at Ball State University. Ball State University, I learned about white people. It wasn't until I met William Cross years later, and I said, so you're Cross. Then we started to really talk about ourselves and our own identities. As a matter of fact, one of the biggest arguments, or the biggest disagreements, argument wouldn't be it, in graduate school, on my doctoral program, really, when I capitalized back. you don't do that. And I kept doing it. And then scratch it off, and I kept doing it. So then I asked that different advisors have a different color paint, so ink, so that I can sort of really know who to come back with the feedback. That's Lemmy and her cane, that's Pauline's sister. Our Aunt Eva, Uncle Hugh, and Aunt Nellie. Yeah. None of them finished high school. All of their children and grandchildren have not just high school, college, advanced degrees. But we can't forget how we got over. And I'm not talking about getting over on the man, I'm talking about getting over on the side that is the place we belong if we are going to grow. We lost everything when I was 17 years old, just out of school. All that you saw back there, materially and monetarily, we lost. Grandma Bridie died, Lot went with her, and my mother and I were stuck alone. She was depressed in this house. There weren't a lot of people around. My sister had left. And my sister came home for some reason, and she said, "Get out of here. Go somewhere. Do something." And I had a scholarship to Savannah State, and for some reason, somebody planted in my head, Mrs. Reeves, my high school teacher, that I should go to Howard or to American University. I understood Howard, but why American University? I found out later, her husband, who they said was a porter, taught economics at American University. They did not live together. He stayed where the job was. She stayed in Savannah. She was secretary of the local NAACP, and they had a relationship that was quite non-traditional. And I went in the day, you've heard this, I went in the day Billie Holiday died. And I always say, I don't know if Mama was crying for me or crying for Billie Holiday, probably both. And we all worked in different places because we were smart Negroes. So we were always isolated. But Sundays, we went to the Jazz House in Wiesbaden, Germany, and life changed for us. That's in the Jazz House. That's right before we got married. Not a lot of discussion and resistance as far as the interracial piece is concerned, or who Inga was marrying and so forth. But I'm sure it was there because one time my mother-in-law told someone that I was an African prince. So I had to be elevated. Got married. I was Catholic back then. I was called in by a Colonel Zerby, who was a good jazz person and a good friend, played a hell of a bass, but he was my big boss. And Jack Chin, the white boy on here with the other picture, was his administrative aide, and he gave me a heads up. He said, "Colonel Zerby wants to talk to you." Said, so be ready, go to Zerby's office, and he gives me a lecture. This is in Gloria Wade Gale's book. I didn't say it's me, but it's me. He gives me this piece about squares, circles, and triangles, and how they don't fit. And I don't know where I got the courage, but my response was, I didn't know we were talking about geometry. He became furious. And I had too many goods on him for him to really, for me to be frightful or anything. So he says, you need to go and see a chaplain for counseling. And he gave me the name of the chaplain to go to. And I told him I'm already seeing a chaplain for counseling, which I was, who found his story very amusing. His name is Father Burke. He died about 5 years ago in New Hampshire. But he remembers the story and he found it to be just amusing. So we got married. I got in the Air Force and I went in and enlisted. Bear in mind, I'm broke. I started taking education programs that they would pay for. And someone by the name of Ringelman, a white man, and I say this because there were white people present doing things, and sometimes they were doing things that they really thought were great things to do to support you, and they could write it off as their social justice piece or whatever. He was an education officer, and he said I should go and apply for OCS, Officer Candidate School, and here's where I need to go. Well, I went, and there was a little, I'm not going to censor stuff here. There's a little white boy sitting behind the desk. He was sitting behind a desk, and he was the gatekeeper. And he said, you don't have the aptitude to be an officer. So, but I had the attitude. Okay. All right. I went back, I saw Mr. Ringelman, and I told him, and he said, you should go back to him. And I don't know what stirred up in me, and I said, why don't you go back to him? Why put me through the fire again? If you are a real supporter and ally, if you're a good white person, you go back. And he turned red. He was nice, but he never went back. So I just kept on pushing. And I pushed to a point. I got a bachelor's degree. I got a master's degree. I became a poster child as a doctorate degree because I was one of, I forgot, I think it was 5 who were enlisted in the Air Force at that time, and they paid for it all. And then they wanted to use me as a poster child. I had a white captain, Nicholas. Just talked to him a month ago. He's in DRUUMM. We became allies because they were going to put him out anyhow. He was too liberal and crazy. And how we became allies is that we did things that people called crazy, and we would pass the buck. He would say, that's what Chief Spencer said, you know, God. And I said, oh my God, you know, Captain Nicholas, he's told us that we have to do this. And then we'd go and we were drinking lots of wine then. we would drink wine and plan our next strategy.
That's great.
Yeah, but it worked. And by that time, I had worked in social actions in the military, in one of the first groups when we were responding to, you had to change hearts before you change mind. And you remember Goldwater was running, and we had a social actions office. That's where I met Jane Elliott. She taught in that particular school. All of the things that we started doing, say 20 years ago, 10 years ago, we were doing as a cutting edge. They required, this is why it's funny what Trump talks about. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. We were doing social actions work in the military a long time. It didn't mean that it meant we were addressing it, and in a sense, the system was covering their own ass, but much of it stemmed out from the fact that at many military installations, people didn't just sit around. This is the Dig Church. The Dig Church is in Incirlik Air Force Base, Turkey. It has one woman, Lucille Wallen, sitting at the end of the table. I love the picture. We were all racists. DIG stood for discussion in group. Yeah. And we challenged. It was more important to be ourselves. We mentored. This is the different life. That's Bill Cross. Bill taught me more about my identity. That's Dr. Terry Oates, Superintendent of Schools, Rockland County. I passed it on to him. We all recognize that, and we recognize that we have a responsibility to pass it beyond that. We are so different, but we can be so honest with each other. These are accountability people. I can call Terry and tell him what a crazy-ass superintendent he is, or what a crazy-ass decision. And he says, "That's right, Doc, I love you," but he'll do something. Bill can call me and say, "You're wrong. You don't have it right." Unitarian Church, God, Fort Walton Beach, Black Conservative Working Group, my partner in crime, Norma Poinsett. We were there, Michelle. All there. And then there's back to family. But your family extends way beyond us, and you have to look back to see how we stand on the shoulders of others. That's the Unitarian Universalist Church of Savannah.
Of Savannah, okay. Okay, I've seen that.
That used to be the Baptist Center.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Good missionary kinds of Baptists who were doing the good work in the black community. And I wasn't quite comfortable with it, but they were doing good work, but there was something that didn't quite fit for me. And the Unitarians were able to buy this finally with the help of a philanthropist who was not Unitarian Universalist. John Burns came when they'd moved, and what do you call it? The building dedication.
Right.
Yeah, and I got the opportunity, if I could find it, I'll find it a year from now. But I had the opportunity during the service to give the charge to the congregation. And John started to talk about how this church, it was not this, but it was on rollers, and they moved it and rolled it from one side of the city to the other, and what all that meant. What he didn't know, and I later found out too, is that was the Black Episcopal Church, St. Stephen's in Savannah. It's the church that I could pull out my great-grandparents' marriage certificate. They were married there. So it's my church and I have a piece of it. I don't know who he is. I do know he saved my ass when I went in the military. Excuse me.
In what way?
He's wearing a uniform. Yeah. I had a place for me there before I got there.
That's true.
Yeah. There are no pieces of this world and culture that people of color have not, I want to say, paid for. So we don't need to continue to have to pay, but we do have to continue to have to give back. We don't have to give back to the larger community. I talk about Unitarian Universalism. The biggest relief for me was giving to ourselves. Black Concerns Working Group. Bawa, Bach. Nobody talked about it when I became a Unitarian Universalist. It was like, oh, they left. Yeah. I think it's 80, 83, 82, 83.
So that was when the General Assembly was in Atlanta that you...
Well, in Atlanta when someone invited me to go. I couldn't afford to go, but I was home, so I went. My whole family went. And they were on a Black Concerns Working Group or whatever in the General Assembly. And the next thing I knew, I was talking with Loretta Williams. And Loretta Williams had called my minister, at the time was Christine Robinson. They were friends. She called Christine and asked her, did she know an African American who was not over involved in everything, who had just worked in congregations so forth. Well, I did a little more than that, but I fit. I was president and founder, one of the founders of the European Unitarian Universalists group. Never got an inch of credit for it. Did an article in the World one time, and I was sort of, okay, fine, that's good. But at any rate, Loretta had the wiseness to say she wanted to be really intentional about who she put there. That's where Mel Hoover and I met.
Right.
I had become Unitarian and Unitarian Universalist way before finding all these facts out. But when I got to Unitarian Universalism, it wasn't something that someone gave me as a gift. The spiritual roots, the roots from ancestors, the religious practices, I had permission to seek. No one invited me in. I could invite myself in. So I don't look at myself as being saved by Unitarian Universalism. I'm saved. I'm saved by the names of people. I'm saved by tradition. I'm saved by people who say, watch out, jump in. That's where my salvation comes from. there's an assumption for many people of color that's made about us or around us that you are here because you're like us. You're one of us. I'm Unitarian Universalist, yes. But what does it mean to be one of us? And there is also the thing of being collected as a token. Or as what I use in Air Force, a poster child. Come back next Sunday and you'll have to meet Leon. Now I see head shaking, but I don't think that just happened to me. The title that we picked, Leslie, I'm gonna go off a little bit. Where is our holy church? Was written by Edwin Wilson, who led the Humanist Foundation at the time at Antioch and was a Unitarian Universalist minister emeritus. And there is a question, if you go back and you look at the words of where is our holy church, I knew where my holy church was when I got there. It's a beautiful hymn, by the way, if you look at it. And what I've had to pull on is not looking at where our holy church is. I've had to look at the piece of what it is that I bring and how it is that I manage to get over it, not by myself. I'm not talking about getting over on somebody. How there's the we of where do I connect, where do I belong? I don't know if I'm even answering your question. I'm a bit off tonight. I'm a bit off on a lot of nights.
Wow, we really appreciate. No,
Yeah.
that definitely answers it. And I know one other aspect that you talked about in our conversations was that even the questions of identity and being Black and the history of your family around Native American and Indigenous folk as well was one aspect you wanted to address.
Oh, absolutely. You know, my whole experience with education in graduate school, well, education in my segregated settings, I learned quite a bit. But, and I'm not the proponent of, I guess I would be the proponent of those folks who were in that moment in time in my life. But I had the good opportunity of meeting Dr. William Cross, who developed Black identity theory. And he started to talk to me about encounters, and we became friends. And he started to push me to look at what's the pre-encounters that happen with folks. How do we get an identity? What happens to us when we get hurt and we need a place or a container to immerse ourselves in, to refuel, and then to come back out, and the same thing happened. Now, he started talking about Black identity, but he was talking about all of our identities. And I think that what's critical in all of this, until we start to look at what I'm going to call the white supremacy socialization, if we don't look there, we are blind. It just didn't happen to me as an African American. You have one picture in there, and someone said, oh, they look like Indians. And that's what they said. Oh, you must have some white in you. These things are said, or were said, I guess they're still said in some Unitarian Universalist settings, in any setting. And if you look at the one picture, we were all taught, including the white people where I lived, to say they had some Cherokee in them. I never seen so many people claim to be Cherokees. I was told by a Unitarian librarian, we didn't talk about this, that I was an issue. And I thought I was an issue, yes, ISSUE. And they went on to say, no, there is some Native American, and there's a tribe that's around Lynchburg that were wiped out by William Plack, who was the Department of Health person who changed the identities on birth certificates. And I went with that and started to research more. I hope I'm not getting too far off.
Well, I might call you back in a minute.
Pardon? Okay.
We'll call you back in a minute.
Okay, fine. Call me back in a minute. And let me say this, how it personally impact on me as I start to look at the whole piece with the Trail of Tears. Everybody didn't go. There were some folks who hid out in Florida. And I've discovered in the last 10 years, there were some of my people who hid out in Florida.
Right. And that was the point you really wanted to be sure that we included. So thank you. Yes.
There were Seminoles, by the way, not Cherokee.
Right. Right. Thank you. And we also talked about the tension between your personal spiritual odyssey and what you call the larger Unitarian Universalism. And when we talked about this, you said, well, I wouldn't just say it was tension. At times, it's even been a clash. Can you talk about that for just a few minutes?
Whoa. If there's no tension, if there's no clash, there's no movement. That's the best way I can put it. You have to have encounter. You have to own. It's hard to own when you are alone or feel alone. The beautiful thing about my 7 church experience, this was not 7 churches over 7 years. This was at the same time growing up that you could go to 7. It was all right. There were different things that it offered, but it taught us how to deal with the spirit of discomfort. I think that if we're doing the kind of work that we do, the spirit of God or the goddess just really should disturb the hell out of us. It's disturbing, it's not comforting. And a lot of times, everybody looks for a way, like we're doing some exercise in church where we have to close this off with something that everybody is going to feel good. It doesn't work. We're going to hold hands and we're going to say we love each other. We may love each other, but love has tension too. And go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, but with that discomfort and the tension, one of the things you talked about is having that clash with your own history, right? With your own history.
It's my history saved me though, Leslie. All of our history saved us. It's a fact of, we can't look at the events that are going on now and ignore our histories. Our histories help to define who we are, whose we are, for some of us, and how we got over, or how we continue to get over. A lot of folks don't like that, but go back and listen to what Mahalia says in words, and it'll move you. it'll move you to do something. There has to be this piece of tension, but there has to be also a place for people that Cross talked about in his initial theory, a place for people to come together among themselves and celebrate themselves and to understand and embrace their history. And look at the tension that happens if you talk about people of color groups and you talk about Black groups, or you talk about identity groups around gender. And I'm saying these are the opportunities for group. Our churches did not provide, I think, that kind of shelter. We said we provide the shelter, but we didn't provide that kind of shelter. And some, they worked at it, but what you did was that you had to give up something to be. Why should I give up what I learned in St. Philip's and First African and Second African and Beth Eden? Why would you assume that I knew nothing about strong women and feminism? Because my people are Baptists and AME. And the other thing I look at is for Unitarian Universalists is that I'm serious about this stuff because I don't think I have as much time as I've had before, is that we have a history of people like Francis Harper, who was AME, Sunday school superintendent, that helped kids to see their pictures on Sunday school cards. Am I rambling too much? All right, so if Francis Harper could be an AME and a Unitarian, why couldn't I? Absolutely. I don't have any problem with that conference. Sometimes I think we have to find another place to refuel DRUUMM. Blue. Come on. And why do you folks have to separate? Why do you folks need this time to be by yourselves? You know, this is our holy church where this is not, you know, we work so hard. Let me tell you the history of it. There is a whole repertoire of pieces. And I don't know, the more texturized I become, I just don't want to spend a lot of time on it by building a case for why I'm here. And I own some of the space. I'm here because somebody else was here before me. Absolutely. And since I've run and, okay. And we have to take care of one another.
Yes, absolutely.
We can't wait on white systems to take care of ourselves because white supremacy, it disconnects us all of us. And it disconnects us as people of color also. And white supremacy is really quite alive. Not just in Unitarian churches, but I want you to realize that, hey, let's celebrate what we can recognize it's alive and we need to dismantle it because we keep saying to people, oh, come to us, we don't. Now we're doing a lot. I don't want to minimize changes and has happened. But boy, we're not, yeah. I don't have that much time.
Right, right. Well, to that end.
I just feel like, you know, a part of me did not want to do this.
I know.
Yeah. It's, if you want me to teach something and you want me to do the theories of families, and we're good at this, we got to do some relational pieces with each other. as people of color, we're doing it, by the way. How do you avoid, or how do I avoid not being used? I look out and I see Janice. I see Sherman. I see you, Leslie. We're all products of the Thomas Jefferson debacle. Yeah, we are. I quit saying Thomas Jefferson. I never said Thomas Jefferson as its trustee and president. I said TJ. It was towards justice. But never, I'm going to call it the something other than the TJ district.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna read you back for the last piece for you to make a comment on, because there are people who want to express their gratitude in this time as well. I will be at the front of that line just saying thank you. It's been an honor to be part of this, shaping this conversation with you over these months. But here's what you said to me a couple days ago when we were working on this. You said, we need to get to the point where we can lovingly hold one another accountable and keep growing together. And I guess what I want to ask you is, what would you also like to add in terms of what you'd like people to take away?
Behind, pack careful, take everything. Do not label it. Share it. Embrace it. Change it. But do not leave it behind. Redefine it. Own it. Let others define who you are, what you are. And I can think of specific ways that institutions are set where it shapes us to leave something behind. And I don't know, it was a white woman told me this, Virginia Suter. She says, well, just put it in the bag and put it on the side there. You might need this at another time. It doesn't, it may look like a weapon now, but it might be a tool somewhere else at another moment in time. Reshape it if you need to. And I try to take it. But there's something that I'm discovering I've been doing this, the collection of pictures and the collections of history for a number of years. I require my class to do it in graduate school and to include process if they start to look at a system. And now if I were to do that at the same university, I'd be doing critical race theory. Hell, we've been doing critical race theory for, God, at least 20. We've done a conference for 22 years that dealt specifically around that issue. So, connect. You can't do this work alone. You're in community. And sometimes you have to disconnect to connect.
Yes. Thank you. Leon, I know from our many hours of conversations, not only around this conversation, but just over the decades, which have been a great blessing to me, that there's so much more wisdom that you have to impart. However, I just want to take time on behalf of all of us to thank you for being willing to share this time with us and these amazing insights from your Odyssey. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank us. Yeah. You know, thank you for, this is home for me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just, you know, it's funny we call it finding our way home. And I know we're on time, and you know how I am with stories. And, you know, when I had left and lost everything at 17, and my mother's crying, and I say about Billie Holiday and me, she gave me a shoebox. People of color used to travel with shoeboxes and pickups. She gave me a shoebox. It had wax paper in it. You remember wax paper? With salt and pepper and boiled eggs and a piece of fried chicken there and another surprise. And on the bottom of the box was a piece of jelly cake that was the most beautiful piece of jelly cake that I know my mama didn't make because she couldn't make a jelly cake. It had to come from my godmama. And under that, as I opened it, was a note. We love you.
And we
Took my
love
box,
you.
by the way. Yeah, I wouldn't give my box up. This is the truth. This is no. I just carried it around with me till they said, soldier, and I was not a soldier, and I wanted to correct them, but I said, what the hell? You know, get rid of that damn box. The box went into the trash, but everything in the box did not. And I managed to share things from the box.
Absolutely.
Actually, that's what blue is for me. That's what drum is for me.
It's that box.
Yeah,
What's
the box?
Absolutely.
Leon, I love you. I want to reach out through this virtual Zoom and just give you the biggest hug. And your voice and your memories and your stories just bring me back to so many moments over the last 30 years that we have worked and labored side by side. And those aha moments, I feel like being in your presence, being in the presence of this community, this is where the good tension is. This is where those aha moments come, where we can be both bold and humbled at the same time with one another. I wanted to just really acknowledge how precious this space is. And I also just wanted to thank everybody who has volunteered and shared your labors, and also a shout out to the Sankofa Special Collection and the folks at Meadville Lombard who really helped hold space for our folks thinking long term. And with our first session with Reverend Dr. Michelle Bentley last fall. And I know this is a lot of work, and I know we had some hiccups and we're all giving it our best, but just want to appreciate everyone, especially Leslie and your son Liam for producing the video, for Sherman and Danielle and Janice and folks who are part of this program, Roddy and Don. And we wanted to hold space for folks to share gratitudes and appreciations and affirmations for you, Leon. Because one thing I've learned from DRUUMM is that we have a living legacy that we need to tend to. We need to care for. We need to water and say the things out loud and not wait. And the DRUUMM chaplain team, as many of you know, has been working very hard this last several years. And these bonds and these relationships are more important. I'd like to open it up to Brother Mel to offer the first affirmation. And if you would like to share, please just raise your hand or put your name in the chat.
Hello, everyone, all DRUUMM members, and Dr. Leon Spencer. I don't know how many of you realize that that picture he just briefly showed where we talked about he and I meeting was the Black Concerns Working Group. The story that I always talk about Leon is we came through Hurricane Gloria that day. The first time we ever met, I was told about this Dr. Leon Spencer, who'd been president of the European UPUs. And I figured out, who is this man? I don't know, hadn't heard of him. He can't know much about our people sitting over there in Europe. I said, we're gonna have, they don't taking somebody with the title to make us feel good. But we got there together in that storm, and that charge was read to us that we were given the opportunity on behalf of this faith to eliminate racism within Unitarian Universalism and beyond. And they gave us $5,000 to do it. And Leon and I looked at each other. We hadn't met before. We raised our hands at the same time. We jumped up, loving Loretta, and said, "We love you, Loretta, but I have two questions." I got a little in first, and I said, "Where's the most expensive restaurant? And how the heck can we get out of here?" And Leon looked at me, and we smiled, but we couldn't get out of there. And we stayed. We stayed that night. We had that meal, we had a few drinks, and then we looked at each other and said, "This is our faith. We will not abandon it." And in that way, throughout my time in this faith, Leon has never abandoned this faith. He's given his all to this faith. He has been a living example of being faith. And he gives of his heart. I was hoping he was going to be Leon. We had a conversation about this. And as I often say to him, I ask one thing of you, Leon, when you are in these settings, be your authentic self, because there's no better gift than you can give. And today, you were with us. You shared with us. You opened your heart, your mind, your experience. That's who you are. You also shared the thing I know about you. You love your family. You have been a great husband, a great father. You are a great grandfather, uncle. I know your family network, but you also have taken the same commitment and caring of the family of our faith, and particularly of those in DRUUMM and Blue and those who are needing to be affirmed, because you are an affirmer. You see and look for the best in people and invite them to bring it into the arena to enhance and strengthen all of us. That's who you are. Leon thought I was going to roast him. He called me and said, "I heard you were going to roast me." I said, "I could not roast you, but I have a chance to toast you, to celebrate you, to tell the truth about you." And that is such a gift. I can only say, thank you, and blessed be. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mel. We are open for sharing from other folks who would like to use our presence together to offer words to Leon. Who would like to go next? Danielle.
Oh, dear Leon. I remember all those times we were on the road doing anti-racism work for the UUA, and I don't know where we were, but I remember one day wasn't going so well. And you just stood up and came to the front and stood behind a podium, and you just simply called it like it was, called people to be accountable, and made them see the light or helped them see the light. And I was sitting behind you when you're at that podium, and I was thinking, oh, thank God for Leon. And I felt that way so many times with you, Leon, when you were in the room. Thank God Leon's here. You know, I'm safe now because Leon is here. And I can't tell you how much you have meant to me over these 30 years. And I can't express my love as much as I would like to tell you how much I love you, how much you mean to me. And I guess that's enough. I love you so much.
Folks can add your name to the chat. You could also use the raise hand feature if that helps. We'll get folks in. I think, is that you, Christina?
That's me.
Hi.
Hi, Leon. Hi, everyone. So from a slightly younger generation of Unitarian Universalists, I just have to say, you know, that your presence and what, just knowing that you were there, that we could always come to you, and I know I came to you in some pretty rough times there, and you just always reaffirmed to me and to us that this is our faith too, that we don't have to give up our vision of a heaven on earth where everyone is free, that we can talk about God and do so unapologetically and all-inclusively, that where our hearts are is more important sometimes of where our politics and our mouths are, right? But it's just, if I was on the board when Leon said yes to serving with Sophia and Bill as the 3 co-presidents. And I remember at the time talking with another religious professional of color, and they said, friends don't let friends become UUA president. Because it's a rough gig. And I remember talking with Leon and saying, thank you so much for saying yes. And the idea of being able to do that job in community, you know, in the community of and with Sophia and Bill. And it was just such a beautiful thing. And it was such a beautiful thing for our faith to witness and to be able to grapple with. And I'm so appreciative of you. I'm just so glad you're in the world.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. We have time for a few more if folks would like to share, and then we have a closing with Janice. Marion.
It's it's no exaggeration to say that I'm still a UU because of the Black Concerns Working Group chapter I was in at First Unitarian in Pittsburgh for about a decade before I married and moved to the Seattle area. No two people in my family of origin are exactly the same color. And my sister has more of the African American looks, and I got more of the Native American looks, but I also got my Scotch Irish grandmother's skin, which has made me white presenting all my life. But I'm BIPOC. My life experience is BIPOC, and part of that life experience included I'm from West Virginia, and I had made a commitment to help raise him from Pittsburgh. My sister and I had that deal from when we were teenagers, like 13, and that we would raise each other's kids. And she needed a lot of help because her husband walked out when he was 2. And there I am, kind of a stranded Southern Appalachian person, completely out of my depth socially at that congregation. But I was an academic. Everybody thought I was Jewish, actually. And helping to raise this kid and driving down 4 hours each way to Charleston, like about once a month, and taking him to his first day of school every year and stuff like that. And I really needed some support, and the Black Concerns Working Group had already had me in, and they were right there with it. And it really gave me a lot of confidence. They were a great sounding board. And it saved my sanity and gave me a reason to go on being so isolated otherwise in that congregation. And I'm just really grateful that that was there. And believe me, when I moved to Seattle in '98, I missed it, and I still do. Thank you. Thank you for persisting, putting yourselves out there and doing that. Thank you.
Barbara, and then John.
Leon, it's Barbara DeLeo from First Church of Rochester. And I'm afraid I'm on the other spectrum because I've only known Leon for a few years. I met him during a Jubilee here in Western New York. And we decided to keep him for an extra day because we had a big snowstorm and he couldn't get home. And I just wanted to say that even though our friendship has been short compared to everybody else in this room, you had such an impact on me as part of Jubilee, your history, your ability to share. We had 40 people. We did a Jubilee. I'm from First Unitarian in Rochester. We had 40 people from our church, 44 exactly, doing Jubilee. And it was a single church Jubilee as opposed to a joint church Jubilee. And we have made, we did some serious bonding that weekend. And your work was just really, really important because we had come through the serious times of trouble and turmoil that in some ways was mimicked at the national level. And so we were battered and bruised, and you just gave us hope to go on and go forward, go through what we needed to go through. And I just wanted to tell you how much I deeply appreciate it and how much I felt replenished and encouraged, because I sort of discovered the world of the larger UU church from our local church, and you were directly responsible for that. So I love you, Leon. Take care of yourself. This was an amazing evening. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Barbara. Pastor John, and then Linda.
Okay, hi. It's good to see you again, Leon. It's been such a long time. I remember from way back when we were starting the Jubilee workshops, and we were trying to figure out how to use the Jubilee workshops in our congregations, and we were meeting all the time. All of the little backlashes that were coming, and how we had to support each other all the time, how we were often mixed up for each other. But we always found a way to support each other, and you always gave us strength. It's like Danielle was would stand up, we should say, or what we wanted to hear all the time, that would really move things along. I always appreciated the way you were very upfront with your thoughts, and your thoughts were very helpful, and they always moved everything along, and they also made us think and sparked everyone to really open a conversation instead of just sitting in the room and listening. They were always very insightful, and even in the worst of circumstances where we were struggling to fit in, we could find comfort in what you were saying, and we could find how you were helping move us towards our goal, basically, at the time, to become a more inclusive denomination. So it's very good to see you again. I've been floating around in and out of UUism, but I must say that you and people like you are the ones that still keep me attached somewhat. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Linda Russell. Linda, we can't hear you. I'm not sure if you have a mute on. Oh, you're still on mute. Or your microphone may not be picking up your audio. It shows you're off mute. I'm so sorry. If you want to add it to the chat. I asked Roddy if they would share a couple of the comments from the chat, unless those beloveds, it looks like Janice and Sophia wanted to share for the recording a comment just on your own.
Well, I can share. This is Janice. I don't know where the chat is. Let me see if I can quickly find it. But Leon, my goodness, my brethren, come from a yard just like me. We're both Jamaican roots, so I had to bring in a little bit of, sprinkle that in. Leon, I have learned so much from you. I have carefully and keenly watched you lead with such grace, with such authenticity, and with a gentle fierceness. I have learned so much from you. I will cherish the lessons that you have taught me, that you continue to teach me. What an extraordinary and exemplar mentor you are to so many of us. Without question, you are our beloved. Thank you. Blessings and Masatan.
Thank you, Janice. Sophia, did you want to say your words out loud? Roddy, you want to share what else is in the comments?
So in the comments, we have from Sophia Betancourt. Leon, I don't want to take up precious time, but I am overflowing with gratitude and love for you. Every one of us has benefited from the paths that you wove across wide open fields. You have encouraged and loved me from the first day we met. I think that was the JTWTC meeting in Boston, where I had no idea what it meant to serve in national groups. I love you, I love you, I love you. I trust you with all my spirit and heart. Thank you for the gift of this evening. And from the Reverend Chris Long, Dear Leon Spencer, there are few words that can express just how moved I continue to be in learning with and from you. The images of your 7 church stories are uplifting uplifting your powerful women in life and living are the true blessing to me. I shall long remember the Bach story and will forever carry it in my journey into that shall be my life. Much love to you and your family. Another one from P. Hall in the comments. I'm not sure who that is, but they write, Leon, from our first meeting in Columbia, South Carolina in the 1980s to the weekend for Black UUs at Penn Center and the blue theology, you affirmed my commitment to continue with UU. Thank you for your contributions to the Black Concerns Working Group and the UUA presidency and everything you touch. And from Linda Russell, thank you for your wisdom, your strength, your experiences that have meant so much here. And thank you for holding the necessary clash as we go and grow.
Blessings unto each of you, beloveds. May we long reflect on this inspired time made holy by our beloved Leon Spencer. May we be cradled in Leon's faith, love, optimism, trust, and fierceness. May we in turn cradle Leon in our faith, love, optimism, and trust in him. May our precious time together nurture and sustain us in untold days to come. May Leon's ancestors ever protect and guide him as our ancestors ever protect and guide us. May Leon's cherished family and the generations to come ever honor his calm essence, his keen focus, and yes, that unwavering optimism. May our chosen families and generations to come ever cherish our essence, our focus, and our optimism. May Leon ever, ever, ever cradle us in his commitment to us and to Unitarian Universalism. His commitment to us that we ever strive to center equity with love. And my prayer, may Unitarian Universalism long cradle Leon in its commitment to him, centering him, centering us with equity and love. May it be so. Ashe, Namaste, Masakan. Blessings.
Where you go, I will go.